Bob?
Further in the same line, it's obvious that if you have a lot of ideas about, such as the Keynesian ones and other ones about the action of an unrestrained market, how it will lead to booms and slumps, how it will lead to the impoverishment of the worker, and wages declining to bare subsistence levels, of pollution, of whatever it might be, women down mines, boys up chimneys, etc., etc. Now, if these ideas are pervasive, and they are, especially since the Second World War, and if it leads to establishments, state establishments being built and expanded, well, they're going to attract the sort of people who believe it, for a start. We certainly feel no immorality is involved here. Their conscience is untroubled. I think they're doing good. They're told that they're doing good. People who want money come to them and smile and say thank you. And it's gracious, they must be doing good. But rather like with the National Grid example, it's now unthinkable that there could be simply non-state monies, despite our present troubles, despite the credit expansion, despite countries expanding and contracting at different rates. It's thought even now to be useful, helpful. Thank God we've got the power, thank God we can depreciate faster than those chaps. Then we'll maintain full employment or something. And it's thought unthinkable that there could be commercial provision of sound money, which there could and would be. As with linking up between electricity producers or the adoption of common codes or common practices or common standards, this was happening commercially. The Whitworth scale and other things could be adopted, were adopted. The state may get in on the act and shake hands and have a photo op, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't have happened without. That's all I don't think. So it's the ideas that are pervasive, almost having a life of their own, and we dance to their tune. But once the establishments are set up, and you're right, apart from a few real conniving swine who say, look, they could do much better without us, but hey, we're here. Let's rake it in. Most people believe that they're doing good. And it'll only collapse with the collapse of the system itself. Then they'll have to turn to us and say, look, this isn't working. What should we do?
Yeah, any number of things like size of cassettes, CDs and so on emerge spontaneously from the market. The chap here?
Yeah, Christian, I'm trying to grapple with, if I understood you correctly, that you made a distinction between the state as an entity and the capitalist class, or the ruling class, and you alluded to the fact that it's quite difficult to define who the ruling class are. And that's in some ways a departure from Marxist analysis, insofar as I understand Marxist analysis, where his view was that the state was essentially a capitalist state, operating in the interest of the capitalist state and not entirely independent of it, insofar as ultimately the state was created to serve the capitalist system. And in the modern state, it seems to me that the monopoly capital, the large monopolies, are integrally involved in the state in terms of, even to take the health service, the role that the large pharmaceutical companies play in shaping health policy. In other industries as well, you know, the universities play a key role in serving high-tech industries. You see it particularly in the States, where there's a very close collaboration between high-tech industries, the leading technology universities and so on. So I didn't see the state as a separate entity, separate from monopoly capital in particular. On the other hand, I think, and you alluded to the Soviet Union, I think there was an example more of a totally parasitic state regime of officials, bureaucrats, who essentially played no useful role in Marxist terms, developing the means of production and so on, just operated as a bureaucratic state. So I'm not quite sure if this state as a separate entity existing and operating for itself, that wasn't exactly how Marx saw it, I didn't think.
Well, no, because I mean Marx saw the ruling class as being the class of people who pay wages. So in other words, what he said is that, you know, the people who pay wages that are below the production, the value of production of the workers. So therefore, they are extorting that, surplus value that the worker is generating. A more, obvious confiscation of the surplus value is really what the ruling class of the state does. Because if you don't pay your taxes, you have men in blue knocking on your door at 4 o'clock in the morning and whisking you out, in handcuffs to some prison. So that is so blatant exploitation that people don't even register it. It is what Hitler said. I mean, the bigger a lie, the better it is believed, because people don't imagine that this could be a lie. And you have a character in François Truffaut's Les 400 coups. I don't know how it's translated into English. But he is a young schoolboy who is constantly late and things like that. And a friend of his says, you have to find a good excuse, but a really good excuse is one that is, really believable. So he arrives and says, again, he's an hour late, and his, teacher says, what happened? He said, my mother died. Oh my God, your mother died. So, and they can't imagine, if he had said, the train was late or something like that, he would have had a, some, I don't know, blame or something like that. But you coming up with something like this, obviously you are believed. So that is what people don't realize, is because it's so blatant that the exploiting class is really the class that is sending armed people, taking up to 50% of what you generate in terms of value, production, wealth, and so on, and taking it for themselves. They may give back a bit, but really they are living off it. Now, in terms of the Soviet Union, you had exactly the same phenomena, except that it was even bigger. In other words, the ruling class was so big that the producing class, the people who did generate the wealth, could no longer support the ruling class. To the point that in 1989, I mean, the Soviet Union, which is much bigger than Russia today, Soviet Union with its 240 million inhabitants had a GNP that was lower than the Netherlands. And it pretended to be, a superpower with 45% of what it generated went to, the military-industrial complex. And to what benefit? To whose benefit?